So I've been away for a few days, guys. I've not been able to react to news as quick as possible. Not as quick as I usually do anyway. And there has been a big story here. Ministers are considering making changes to the driving license laws here in the UK, including potentially mandating eye tests to over 70s. And if they fail these eye tests, if their vision is deemed not to be good enough, then they could have their license taken off of them. They will be banned from driving. Very bold move, interesting move. I'm sure people have got a lot of opinions on it, but let's have a look first at what has been said about this, guys. Shout out to the BBC News for covering this story because, yeah, this is a massive one and over 5,600 comments. People have got opinions about this, fair to say, but let's go through it here. Motorists over 70 could be banned from the roads if they fail compulsory eye tests under a radical shake-up of driving laws in Great Britain. Plans also include reducing the drink driving limit both in Wales and England to be in line with Scotland's lower limits and giving people points on their licence for not wearing a seatbelt. The move comes after an inquest into 4 deaths caused by drivers with failing eyesight saw a coroner call the UK's licensing system the laxest in Europe. The changes are expected to be included in a new road safety strategy set to be published by the government in the autumn, with ministers believing that the current safety messaging is not working. In no other circumstance would we accept 1,600 people dying on the roads each year, with thousands more seriously injured, costing the NHS more than £2 billion per year, a government source told the BBC. This Labour government will deliver the first road safety strategy in a decade, imposing tougher penalties on those breaking the law, protecting road users and restoring order to our roads, the source said. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has said she supports the plans to bring in compulsory eye tests for drivers over 70. There's a shock. I mean, people over 70 on average do vote for that party, so yeah, that's a surprise, I'll be honest. I think we need to make sure the people driving on our roads are using the streets safely, she added. In April, Senior Coroner for Lancashire Dr James Adley sent a report to Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander to say action should be taken to prevent future deaths after he found enforcement of visual legal standards for drivers being unsafe. Following the inquest, a source close to the Transport Secretary told the BBC that the government accepted that the rules need to be reassessed. The UK is one of only 3 European countries to rely on self-reporting of visual conditions affecting the ability to drive. Now, a new requirement being prepared by the Transport Secretary could make eye tests for the over 70s compulsory when they renew their driving licence every 3 years. However, Peter Brown, 73 from Great Yarmouth, told the BBC that he has tried to get an appointment to get his sight checked but is unable to get one. He says that he has glaucoma and reported it to the DVLA, but that has not stopped him driving. I'm quite frustrated, he said. If it was found that my eyesight was not of a sufficient level to drive, would it be my fault or the NHS for not being able to give me an appointment? Well, I mean, you can get your sight checked in other places other than the NHS. A lot of people use private companies like Specsavers to do so. I mean, I know it's not always convenient, especially for more elderly people, but that is an option that you have. You don't have to go through the NHS for an eye test. As far as I'm aware anyway. I know it's not free and these people sometimes don't have money to be able to pay for that, and that is a problem. But it's not impossible either. And regardless of all that as well, if your eyesight was bad, would getting it tested change your eyesight? If your eyesight is bad and you're not able to drive because of it, then it should be quite a good thing that you shouldn't be able to drive. Surely, if you're not in a safe condition to be able to drive, then why should you be allowed to? Now, obviously, these limits are subjective. I'm sure there's going to be some people that will say that they'll take too much when it comes to the actual limits for this, but that's a different discussion for a different day. Edmund King, president of the AA, defended drivers like Peter over the age of 70, saying they are still relatively safe, although acknowledged bringing in a compulsory eye test was a small price to pay for safety. When you look at road deaths, the big peaks are with the young, new drivers and then older drivers. Although older drivers, it does tend to be those over 80 and 85, he told BBC's Radio 4. Quoting stats from road safety charity Break, Mr. King added that 1 in 5 young drivers crash in their first year and over 1,500 young drivers are killed or seriously injured in a car each year. That is the big problem. There is a big problem when it comes to young drivers for sure. There's also a problem when it comes to elderly drivers, and they both need dealing with for sure. How you deal with the younger drivers, I don't know. that's a much more complex situation. But the elderly drivers, this I think would probably help, to be honest. And then also under consideration, like I said in the intro for this video, is the drink driving limit. I mean, personally for me, that is a very complicated issue, but I've said this before on drink driving videos when I've come to this, and I do really get the vibe that people disagreeing with me here are those that break the law when it comes to this. Because basically the rule of thumb in England, for the most part, if you're having a meal, you can probably get away with 1 or 2 pints, with 1 glass of wine or something like that, right? If you go over that, you're probably going to be over the limit. It's all down to your weight and how you process alcohol. It's all to do with the amount of alcohol in your blood system. That is what is effectively tested when you do the breathalyzer test. But I've said it before, like if you can't go to a social function without having a drink of alcohol, then maybe you're the problem. Maybe you have a problem. I'm just saying. And those that disagree with me on that, I think you're probably voicing your frustrations because, you know, maybe you're incapable of doing that. I don't know. But back on the topic of elderly drivers, I mean, yeah, the big spikes, it gets further up. It gets a much bigger spike after 80. Maybe 80 would be a reasonable limit rather than 70. But the fact remains that if your eyesight is not good enough for you to be able to drive safely, then why should you be allowed on the roads at that point? When I did my driving test, if I did my driving test without these on, I would have failed. You know why? Because I wouldn't have been able to read the license plate at the distance. I need these to be able to see long distance. And yes, you can get corrective lenses and they will help with your eyesight, but there's limits to it. Some people's eyesight is just so bad that even with the best glasses, they still can't see very well. And trust me, if you try and drive a car, even for a few minutes, without corrective lenses, with eyes that are not good enough to see long distance and perceive hazards, that is basically, hazard perception is a big part of the practical test and the theory test. If you're unable to do that, then I'm sorry, but you really shouldn't be driving. And I know it's a big part of people's independence. I know it is. And I know people don't like having that freedom taken away from them. But people don't like being in car crashes either. How would you feel it if an 80-year-old man or woman crashed into you because they couldn't see you and you got severely injured because of that? It can happen. It's unlikely to happen. It's unlikely to happen. A lot of elderly crashes, if I'm not mistaken, are relatively low speed, whereas young people's crashes are relatively high speed for the most part. So that is just as dangerous, if not even more dangerous, in my opinion. And there's got to be something done with that, but that's a separate issue. For me, I think this is sensible. 70 maybe is a little low. Maybe do it at 80, but I think the premise of it is pretty solid. So to be honest, I wouldn't be against it if it came in. But I know a lot of people are not going to agree with me on that one. Get your thoughts in the comments below. Is this young whippersnapper talking about things he doesn't know about? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I want to hear what you have to say about this. Like, share, comment, subscribe if you want to see more like this, guys. And have a fantastic day wherever in the world today. And we'll see you very soon.